In the grim and unforgiving expanse of the 41st millennium, stories of valor and brutality intertwine like the threads of a war-torn tapestry. Amidst the countless chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, those genetically engineered warriors who stand as the Emperor's shield, few inspire as much fear, awe, and suspicion as the Minotaurs. Clad in their bronze-gold armor, they are not simply a weapon in the Imperium's vast arsenal. To those who whisper their name, they are a blunt force of annihilation sent when the Imperium requires absolute subjugation. Yet, the Minotaurs are not spoken of with the reverence granted to chapters like the Ultramarines or the Salamanders. Instead, they evoke dread, for where the Minotaurs tread, destruction follows without question or compromise. This is a tale not of honor-bound warriors or noble paragons, but of enforcers whose loyalty is as enigmatic as their origins. The Minotaurs are summoned for tasks deemed too politically fraught or morally murky for other Astartes, conflicts where the lines between treachery and loyalty blur. They are called upon to enforce imperial will with ruthless efficiency, silencing dissent within the Imperium itself. It is not uncommon for the Minotaurs to be seen not as saviors, but as heralds of sanctioned purges. Yet, for all the fear they invoke, there are few who deny their effectiveness. To cross them is to invoke an ancient predator's wrath, swift, merciless, and absolute. But who are these warriors truly? Their chapter stands apart in ways that have sparked endless debate among the chroniclers of the Adeptus Terra and the Inquisition alike. Questions arise at every turn. Who commands them from the shadows, and what is the nature of their allegiance? To understand the Minotaurs is to accept the contradictions of their existence, heroic yet monstrous, loyal yet estranged, protectors yet executioners. This account begins not with triumph or tragedy, but with the foundation of fear itself. To understand the Minotaurs, one must set aside the tales of noble defenders and consider what it means to be a weapon unburdened by hesitation or conscience. As the veil is pulled back, it becomes clear that their purpose is entwined with forces far beyond the comprehension of the average imperial citizen. This chapter's legacy is one of paradox, where loyalty to the throne of Terra does not always equate to the ideals of justice or compassion. Prepare to witness the Minotaurs as they are, a symbol of what the Imperium becomes when its survival is placed above all else. This story is one of devastation, loyalty shrouded in mystery, and the price of obedience in a galaxy where even angels of death can be remade into instruments of shadowed purpose. The Minotaurs chapter stands as a monolithic force within the Adeptus Astartes, its warriors renowned for their brutal efficiency and unbreakable cohesion in battle. Unlike many other Space Marine chapters, the Minotaurs are defined by their near-absolute adherence to command and their terrifying ability to wage wars of attrition. The chapter operates as a hammer of imperial will, often tasked with quelling internal conflicts that threaten to fracture the Imperium. This sets them apart from their kin, as their focus is not solely on external enemies, but also on rooting out dissidents and rebellion within the Emperor's domain. To the Imperium's leadership, they are a vital, if unsettling, asset, a chapter seemingly forged to dominate rather than defend. At the heart of the Minotaurs' operations are their chapter masters, figures who wield unmatched authority and are known for their tactical ruthlessness. Unlike the celebrated commanders of other chapters, who often gain renown for their public heroics, the leaders of the Minotaurs remain shrouded in deliberate obscurity. Their role is singular, to ensure the chapter remains an instrument of unquestioning obedience. While their names may be whispered on rare occasions, their legacies are built not through glory, but through the crushing weight of their victories over perceived traitors and dissenters. Another critical element of the Minotaur structure is their elite cadre of warriors who form the backbone of their most decisive engagements. These veterans, often referred to as the chapter's unyielding vanguard, are equipped with relic-grade war gear that rivals that of the most prestigious forces in the Imperium. Their armor and weapons, though practical in appearance, bear marks of their countless conquests. These seasoned soldiers lead the charge in battles where intimidation and overwhelming power are paramount, reinforcing the Minotaurs' reputation for delivering rapid and total dominance. The broader Adeptus Astartes plays an indirect yet significant role in the Minotaurs' existence. Although the Minotaurs share the genetic and martial heritage common to all space marines, their presence often stirs unease among their peers. Other chapters view them with suspicion, and in some cases, outright disdain. This isolation only reinforces their sense of purpose, as they operate without alliances or external support, relying solely on their own strength and the grim directives they are given. Above the Minotaurs stands the High Lords of Terra, the Imperium's ruling council. This governing body, consisting of the most powerful figures in human space, is thought to be the primary source of the Minotaurs' orders. When whispers of treason spread within the vast machinery of imperial power, the High Lords do not dispatch envoys or diplomats. They unleash the Minotaurs. Whether to break a rebellious world or crush a rogue commander, the chapter answers only to those who represent the Imperium's ultimate authority. Their relationship with the High Lords reinforces the belief that the Minotaurs exist as a weapon of internal control, enforcing the status quo with calculated violence. The Inquisition also plays a significant yet ambiguous role in relation to the Minotaurs. Though the Inquisition's agents often act autonomously, rumors persist of connections between certain inquisitors and the chapter's campaigns. The Inquisition's influence over the Imperium's most secretive operations suggests that the Minotaurs' deployment may sometimes align with the goals of these shadowy agents. Whether they serve willingly or are maneuvered into such roles is a question that has long troubled Imperial historians. However, the chapter's willingness to pursue campaigns with little regard for external approval raises questions about who truly controls their leash. Lastly, the Adeptus Mechanicus stands as a crucial yet overlooked faction within the Minotaur's war machine. The chapter's war gear and vehicles, forged in the massive forges of Mars and beyond, display a level of sophistication that hints at a deeper relationship with the Mechanicus than most chapters enjoy. The Minotaur's ability to deploy heavily reinforced fleets and siegecraft speaks to a logistical support structure far exceeding that of many other chapters. However, this support may not come without a price, as the Mechanicus is known for using its resources to wield influence over those who depend on its technologies. Together, these key participants, both allies and silent observers, form the larger framework within which the Minotaurs operate. Their story is one not only of combat, but of intricate connections to the Imperium's political, military, and technological machinations. Understanding these roles is essential to unraveling the purpose behind the chapter's seemingly endless crusades of suppression. Whether as pawns in a larger game or as something far more deliberate, the Minotaur's presence represents the Imperium's harshest truth. Survival often comes at the cost of morality, trust, and kinship. The origins of the Minotaur's current role within the Imperium lie in a turbulent period of history marked by internal instability and the relentless expansion of imperial control. The age of apostasy, with its echoes of rebellion and unchecked ambition, had left scars across the Imperium that did not fully heal even after the re-establishment of centralized rule. As the centuries passed, it became increasingly evident to the High Lords of Terra that the Imperium's greatest threat often came from within. Rogue commanders, ambitious planetary governors, and rebellious noble houses began to rise against the established order, emboldened by the vast distances that separated them from the core of imperial power. This pervasive instability demanded the creation, or rediscovery, of forces that could swiftly and decisively quell insurrections before they could spiral into full-blown civil wars. During this era, the Imperium faced an ideological crisis as well as a military one. The imperial creed spread across millions of worlds, created a complex tapestry of interpretations, and not all adhered to the orthodox teachings of the ecclesiarchy. While the Adeptus Arbites maintained order through enforcement of the emperor's law, their limitations became clear when faced with militarized uprisings. Similarly, the Imperial Guard, with its vast but often slow-moving legions, was poorly suited for precision strikes against well-defended dissidents. It was in response to this climate that the Imperium began seeking chapters of Space Marines that could act as rapid and overwhelming enforcers of Imperial will. The goal was not just military conquest, but to serve as a visceral reminder of the Emperor's wrath. One of the key catalysts for the Minotaurs' rise to prominence was the increased frequency of so-called secessionist wars. Entire sectors had grown wealthy and powerful, often regarding themselves as beyond the reach of the Imperium's bureaucratic oversight. These regions did not necessarily reject the Emperor outright, but often viewed the High Lord's dictates as burdensome or outdated. When imperial tithes were withheld, punitive expeditions were deployed to ensure compliance, but many of these campaigns devolved into costly and prolonged conflicts. This pattern of defiance and delayed resolution led the Imperium to experiment with more direct solutions, seeking forces capable of crushing rebellions swiftly without bogging down in extended sieges or attrition warfare. Furthermore, as the Imperium's vast machinery churned forward, the High Lords faced an existential dilemma. While they wielded authority over countless worlds, their grip was tenuous in the face of localized insurrections and administrative corruption. This realization gave rise to the doctrine of preemptive suppression, a strategy that sought to neutralize potential threats before they could mature into rebellions. However, this doctrine demanded enforcers who were not only skilled in warfare, but unflinching in their execution of controversial mandates. Conventional imperial forces struggled to fulfill this role, as many commanders hesitated when orders bordered on annihilation rather than pacification. The aftermath of multiple disastrous rebellions reinforced this need. Conflicts such as the Abyssal Crusade and the Vraxian insurrection underscored the cost of hesitation and the peril of political fragmentation. The Imperium's elite strategists concluded that loyalty alone was insufficient if it was not paired with ruthless efficiency. This led to the formalization of what became known as pacification chapters, those intended to restore imperial dominion through force without concern for public perception or political repercussions. The Minotaurs emerged in this climate of paranoia and desperation. They were not created to inspire. They were sculpted to dominate. Their doctrine of unrelenting siegecraft and attrition was seen as the perfect countermeasure to fortified dissidents who believed their isolation rendered them untouchable. Unlike other chapters known for symbolic victories or precision strikes, the Minotaurs specialized in campaigns that left no opposition standing and no questions unanswered. The Imperium needed more than warriors. It needed silencers who could make an example of entire systems, ensuring that others would fall in line without the need for constant interventions. However, this rise to prominence did not happen in isolation. The internal power dynamics of the Imperium shifted alongside the emergence of militarized enforcers like the Minotaurs. Political factions within the Adeptus Terra began to push for measures that blurred the line between military suppression and outright extermination. While some factions argued for greater oversight and diplomacy, others insisted that loyalty could only be secured through terror and subjugation. This ideological divide fueled debates that reshaped the Imperium's military doctrine and reinforced the belief that brutal examples were a necessary evil to prevent systemic collapse. Thus, the Minotaurs became an embodiment of this grim philosophy. Their rise was not merely the result of war. It was the consequence of a galaxy teetering on the edge of internal implosion. The Imperium's fear of disunity and betrayal forged them into a weapon that was feared even by those who commanded them. The stage was set for a chapter that would operate beyond the normal boundaries of honor or restraint, serving as a reminder that in the Imperium of man, loyalty is often enforced through absolute destruction rather than trust or negotiation. The escalation of events involving the Minotaurs chapter unfolds as a series of calculated and brutal interventions, each reinforcing their reputation as an uncompromising force of suppression. Their rise to prominence was not marked by a single conflict, but by a pattern of operations that demonstrated their ruthless efficiency and purpose. These engagements began as isolated incidents, but soon evolved into a series of systematic campaigns designed to eliminate rebellion, enforce imperial authority, and silence dissent before it could spread. One of the earliest recorded instances that cemented their role took place during an uprising that had spiraled beyond the control of local imperial forces. A distant subsector, emboldened by its strategic isolation, declared independence, refusing to meet its tithe quotas and challenging the authority of the administratum. Diplomatic envoys sent to restore order were executed publicly, and military intervention seemed inevitable. It was under these dire circumstances that the Minotaurs were dispatched, marking the first publicized instance of their involvement in quelling internal dissension. Unlike previous campaigns where loyalist forces aimed to reclaim territory with minimal collateral damage, the Minotaurs' approach was defined by unrelenting aggression. They did not negotiate terms or seek surrender. They dismantled the subsector's infrastructure, executing planetary rulers and obliterating military installations. Within weeks, the rebellion was reduced to ashes, serving as a chilling precedent for how imperial defiance would be punished. As word of their devastating success spread, the High Lords of Terra grew increasingly reliant on the Minotaurs. Subsequent operations followed a familiar pattern. A secessionist world or rebellious sector would rise in defiance, only for the Minotaurs to be unleashed upon them. Their methods, brutal as they were, became a doctrine in itself, a doctrine that dictated swift, overwhelming force as the only means of ensuring lasting compliance. These events often played out in brutal synchrony, precision strikes against key infrastructure, followed by prolonged sieges that left no stronghold intact. Civilian populations, if spared at all, were subjected to forced relocations or complete annihilation if they were deemed complicit in the uprising. Unlike more measured imperial commanders, the Minotaurs left no margin for doubt in their wake. In one of their most infamous campaigns, an alliance of rogue imperial commanders and planetary governors sought to establish an autonomous enclave within a resource-rich sector. The imperial response, initially led by the Astra Militarum, was slow and bogged down by the sheer scale of the opposition's defenses. The Minotaurs arrived as a second wave, their arrival a grim portent for the dissidents. Their fleet, bristling with firepower, surrounded the core worlds and enacted a campaign of orbital bombardment so relentless that resistance quickly turned to desperation. When the Minotaurs finally deployed ground forces, their assault was not merely a matter of overwhelming the enemy. It was a spectacle of force meant to send a message to the entire sector. Within months, the rebellion was extinguished, and its leaders were eradicated without mercy. Another significant turning point in their operational history was their deployment during a civil war between two imperial factions. This internal conflict had threatened to engulf several systems in bloodshed as rival nobles and regiments vied for supremacy. Though both sides claimed to be loyal to the emperor, their refusal to seek a peaceful resolution prompted intervention. The Minotaurs did not align with either faction. Instead, they annihilated both leadership hierarchies in a series of surgical strikes. By decapitating the war effort of both sides, they forced the remaining forces to surrender to imperial authority without the need for prolonged engagements. The swiftness of this outcome further solidified their reputation as a chapter with no interest in political nuance, only absolute resolution. Not every deployment was met without resistance, however. On more than one occasion, the Minotaurs faced fortified planets whose defenders were prepared to fight to the bitter end. In these instances, their siege tactics were put on full display. Their use of overwhelming artillery barrages, landings supported by armored spearheads, and precise demolitions ensured that even the most fortified bastions fell in due time. The psychological impact of their campaigns was immense. Even imperial worlds loyal to the throne would look upon their arrival with unease, knowing that once the Minotaurs were dispatched, total compliance was non-negotiable. Despite their effectiveness, the Minotaurs' actions were not without controversy. Whispers of overreach began to circulate among certain segments of the ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition. These murmurs, however, had little impact on the Minotaurs themselves, who maintained their unwavering focus on fulfilling their mandates. The High Lords continued to employ the chapter, recognizing that for all the political complications their presence caused, the alternative, letting rebellions fester, was far worse. This utilitarian approach defined the relationship between the Minotaurs and their masters, a dynamic built not on trust or mutual respect, but on the unspoken understanding that the Imperium's survival necessitated sacrifices. The culmination of these events did not lead to accolades or glory, but to a deeper entrenchment of their grim reputation. The Minotaurs became synonymous with fear, their name invoked as a warning to those who dared challenge imperial rule. Each campaign reinforced their identity as enforcers of last resort, whose presence signified that diplomacy and compromise had failed. Their history is thus a chronicle of escalation, of a chapter shaped by the Imperium's darkest needs and wielded as a tool of final judgment. Through their brutal campaigns, they became not just an instrument of imperial power, but a reflection of its harshest truth, that in the face of disunity, mercy is a luxury that cannot always be afforded. The pivotal moment that defined the Minotaurs' identity and cemented their feared reputation across the galaxy came during a conflict that would later be remembered not for its scale, but for the message it sent to the entirety of the Imperium. A strategically vital subsector known for its shipyards and manufactorums had fallen into chaos due to the unchecked ambitions of a powerful warlord. What began as an isolated dispute between rival imperial governors spiraled into a full-blown crisis when the local Astra Militarum commanders, fearing retribution from higher authorities, allied with rebellious noble houses in a bid to establish their autonomy. The conflict threatened to sever a key supply route that fed multiple war fronts, making a rapid and decisive response imperative. Conventional imperial forces initially attempted to suppress the uprising, but failed due to the complexity of the political entanglements and the extensive fortifications the secessionists had constructed. Time was running out, and with critical resources at stake, the High Lords of Terra convened to deliberate on the appropriate response. The decision they reached was unprecedented. The Minotaurs would be deployed not merely to quell the rebellion, but to annihilate every trace of it. This marked a shift from containment and reclamation to the wholesale eradication of any challenge to imperial supremacy. The Minotaurs were given free rein, with only one directive: to make the consequences of disobedience unforgettable. The moment their fleet translated into real space, it became clear that this would not be an ordinary campaign. The warlord leading the rebellion had fortified his holdings with a massive fleet and planetary defenses designed to withstand years of siege warfare. However, the Minotaurs did not engage in a protracted battle of attrition. Instead, they employed a terrifying precision that broke the will of the defenders in a matter of days. Key orbital platforms were obliterated in coordinated strikes, cutting off supply lines and communications. Entire planetary defense grids were rendered useless as the Minotaurs' strike cruisers and battle barges unleashed a calculated bombardment that bypassed surface defenses and targeted critical infrastructure. The ground assault that followed was no less decisive. In a daring maneuver, the Minotaurs deployed their elite armored companies in coordinated drop assaults, establishing multiple strongholds deep within enemy territory simultaneously. Their rapid territorial gains forced the defenders into a disorganized retreat, their fortified zones falling like dominoes under the relentless pressure. What made this campaign a defining moment, however, was not just the destruction wrought upon the warlord's forces. It was the aftermath. Once the rebellion had been crushed and the remnants of the warlord's regime scattered, the Minotaurs systematically dismantled the political and military frameworks that had allowed the insurrection to take root. Key industrial hubs and aristocratic estates were razed to the ground, leaving the region devoid of the wealth and influence that had once fueled its defiance. The decision to leave the subsector in ruins rather than rebuild it sparked a wave of debate across the higher echelons of the Imperium. While many praised the outcome as a necessary demonstration of imperial dominance, others viewed it as a troubling precedent. Yet for the Minotaurs, this campaign solidified their doctrine. Compliance was not enough. There had to be absolute submission, and any defiance, no matter how entrenched, would be punished with obliteration. This shift in approach marked a departure from the more conventional methods employed by other chapters, who often sought to reclaim and reinforce imperial holdings after a conflict. The Minotaurs' actions served as a stark reminder that there were forces within the Imperium willing to sacrifice entire regions to ensure that rebellion never gained a foothold again. Perhaps the most significant aspect of this campaign was the precedent it set for the future. In the aftermath, the Minotaurs were no longer regarded as just enforcers of imperial will. They became synonymous with annihilation. Their success emboldened the High Lords to call upon them more frequently, knowing that deploying the chapter sent a message more powerful than any declaration or decree. This decision also deepened the isolation of the Minotaurs from the broader Space Marine Brotherhood. While some chapters disdained their willingness to engage in internecine conflicts, others quietly acknowledged that in an age defined by treachery and rebellion, there was value in a force that would never hesitate to strike down even those who claimed loyalty. For the Minotaurs, this turning point redefined their purpose. Their campaigns were no longer seen as temporary measures to restore order, but as calculated demonstrations designed to prevent future descent through fear. The destruction of the Warlords' rebellion served as a grim blueprint for future operations, where obliteration was not just a means to an end, but a tool of psychological warfare. By making an example of this subsector, the Minotaurs ensured that the fear of imperial retribution would ripple far beyond the stars that witnessed their wrath. No planetary governor, no rogue commander, and no rebellious faction could ignore the fate that befell those who dared to defy the Imperium's rule. The consequences of this decision would resonate for centuries, reshaping the Imperium's approach to rebellion and reinforcing the perception of the Minotaurs as the ultimate arbiters of punishment. Though their methods remained controversial, the unspoken agreement among the Imperium's rulers was clear. When survival demanded absolute loyalty, there would be no room for mercy or compromise. The Minotaurs had become the embodiment of this harsh reality, their defining moment forever tied to the day the Imperium chose annihilation over reconciliation. The aftermath of the Minotaurs' brutal campaigns reverberated across the galaxy in ways that reshaped political, military, and societal dynamics within the Imperium. Their legacy was felt far beyond the battlefields they had scorched, influencing not only how rebellions were handled, but also how imperial factions interacted with one another. The most immediate and visible consequence of their actions was the establishment of fear as a form of governance. Entire sectors became painfully aware that even whispers of dissent could invite destruction on a scale that left no survivors to tell the tale. The psychological impact of this knowledge created an atmosphere of paranoia that seeped into every layer of imperial society, from planetary governors to common citizens. Administrators, nobles, and commanders who once believed they could operate with relative impunity found themselves rethinking every decision. Loyalty to the Imperium was no longer merely an expectation. It became a survival mechanism. Even distant sectors, far removed from direct conflicts, reinforced their defenses and increased their tithes to avoid the possibility of attracting unwanted attention. The tales of the Minotaurs' campaigns were circulated, often embellished, until they became grim legends in their own right. These stories served as both a warning and a grim motivator for imperial officials who feared becoming the next example of unflinching punishment. The military repercussions were equally significant. The Minotaurs' approach to warfare shifted the Imperium's broader strategic thinking. Where once there was an emphasis on reclaiming and fortifying rebellious worlds, the Minotaurs' doctrine of annihilation suggested that some conflicts could only be resolved through overwhelming force. This notion took root among certain high-ranking commanders within the Imperial Guard and the Adeptus Mechanicus, who began advocating for more aggressive solutions to crises. While not all shared this perspective, the ripple effect of the Minotaurs' campaigns influenced how future conflicts were framed. Siegecraft, overwhelming firepower, and attrition tactics became more widely studied, even among those who viewed the Minotaurs' methods with unease. Another notable consequence was the shifting power dynamics between the imperial institutions responsible for maintaining order. The Arbites, traditionally tasked with enforcing law across imperial worlds, found their authority diminished in the eyes of some planetary rulers who viewed their presence as insufficient in comparison to the brutal precision of the Minotaurs. Similarly, the role of the Inquisition in suppressing heresy and rebellion became more scrutinized. Some inquisitors viewed the Minotaurs as an asset, an extension of their power that could be called upon in the darkest of circumstances. Others, however, saw the chapter's growing notoriety as dangerous, fearing that their unchecked devastation could undermine the delicate balance between fear and faith that sustained imperial rule. The ecclesiarchy, too, felt the ripples of the Minotaurs' actions. The destruction of entire rebellious worlds often included the annihilation of shrines, cathedrals, and relics revered by loyal imperial citizens. While the Minotaurs' actions were sanctioned at the highest levels, the obliteration of religious sites provoked outrage among certain factions within the clergy. Tensions simmered between those who viewed the chapter's work as necessary purges and those who believed that such actions risked alienating the faithful. This tension did not lead to open confrontation, but added to the growing narrative that the Minotaurs, though loyal, operated without regard for the symbolic and spiritual foundations of the Imperium. Civilian populations, even those far removed from rebellion, were not immune to the lasting impact of the Minotaurs' campaigns. Fear became a constant presence, reinforced by grim tales of annihilated cities and entire planets reduced to wastelands. This fear often manifested in stricter compliance with imperial edicts and heightened suspicion within communities. Neighbor turned against neighbor, accusations of sedition became more common, and local officials enforced imperial law with a severity born not of zeal, but of terror. The notion that survival depended on unquestioning obedience took root in the hearts and minds of the Imperium's countless citizens. The High Lords of Terra, emboldened by the Minotaurs' success, grew increasingly reliant on their methods. This reliance, however, came with its own risks. Other Space Marine chapters, particularly those with histories of independence and strong cultural identities, began to question the precedent being set. The fear that the Minotaurs' methods could one day be used against loyalist Astartes chapters created an undercurrent of distrust within the Adeptus Astartes as a whole. While outright confrontation remained unlikely, the Minotaurs' role as enforcers of imperial authority against their own kin fostered an atmosphere of quiet unease. The concept of loyalty, once seen as a shared bond among the Space Marine chapters, was now tinged with doubt and suspicion. In the political arena, the Minotaurs' campaigns became a double-edged sword for those who wielded power. While their destruction of rebellions reaffirmed the dominance of the Imperium, it also made certain factions wary of the growing influence of those who commanded such forces. The fear that the Minotaurs could be directed against political rivals became a new form of leverage within the intricate web of imperial governance. Whispered conspiracies suggested that some among the High Lords used the Minotaurs not only to enforce order, but to eliminate threats to their own power. Whether or not these rumors were true, their very existence reinforced the perception that no one, not even the Imperium's highest officials, was beyond reach. In the void left behind by their campaigns, many sectors struggled to recover. Economies devastated by scorched earth tactics often took decades, if not centuries, to rebuild. For some worlds, the return to imperial compliance came at the cost of cultural extinction, as entire populations were relocated or replaced to ensure no trace of rebellion remained. This method of total control created stability at an immense cost, further entrenching the notion that in the Imperium, survival was often achieved through destruction rather than preservation. The Minotaurs' actions reshaped the galaxy not just through conquest, but by altering the very fabric of the Imperium's societal and political norms. Their legacy became a testament to the brutal calculus of survival in a galaxy beset by endless war. The cost of their victories was counted not only in the ruins of rebellious worlds, but in the shifting perceptions of loyalty, fear, and power. Through their actions, the Imperium gained stability, but it also deepened the shadows of mistrust and unease that would linger for generations to come. One of the most intriguing aspects surrounding the Minotaurs chapter is the nature of their war doctrine and the advanced arsenal they wield, which have long fueled speculation within the Warhammer 40k community. Their tactics are distinguished by an unparalleled focus on siege warfare and attrition, yet what truly sets them apart is the scale and sophistication of their war gear. The Minotaurs' battle fleets are often reported to contain an unusually high concentration of capital-class ships and specialized strike craft. Their battle barges and strike cruisers are outfitted with void weaponry and advanced shielding systems that rival even those of more renowned chapters with longer histories. This unparalleled access to high-grade equipment has led to widespread debate among scholars of imperial history and fan theorists alike. Many Space Marine chapters, even those with prestigious legacies, struggle to maintain such a formidable level of technological upkeep due to the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the Adeptus Mechanicus and the scarcity of ancient relics. Yet the Minotaurs not only maintain, but seem to excel in acquiring and deploying devastating war machines with remarkable consistency. This has sparked theories that their chapter receives preferential treatment from factions within the Mechanicus, potentially in exchange for fulfilling secretive mandates that align with Martian interests. Another unique characteristic that sets the Minotaurs apart is their use of heavily reinforced Terminator armor and unique patterns of siege weapons. Their formations often feature siege drills, plasma incinerators, and specialized energy shields designed to withstand sustained bombardment and direct heavy fire. In ground engagements, their infantry operates in tight phalanx formations, an uncommon sight among other chapters, emphasizing a unified front where every warrior's movement reinforces the next. This tactic, combined with the overwhelming firepower of their dreadnought contingents, has led many to compare their approach to a hybridization of ancient Terran military philosophies. One of the most fiercely discussed elements among fans is the presence of relic-grade dreadnoughts within their ranks that seem to defy conventional records. These war constructs, believed to be from an unknown forged lineage, exhibit patterns of craftsmanship that differ from standard templates sanctioned by the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their armor plating is noticeably thicker, with reinforced ceramite that bears inscriptions suggesting a blend of Mechanicum blessings and unknown augmentation techniques. This deviation from codified norms raises questions about whether these machines are entirely compliant with the doctrines of Mars, or if they represent forbidden archaeotech rediscovered or secretly sanctioned for specific purposes. Further fueling this speculation is the Minotaurs' exclusive use of advanced siege tanks and artillery units rarely deployed outside of highly classified Mechanicus sanctuaries. Some models, such as specialized bombardment tanks and prototype breacher units, have been observed only within the chapter's campaigns, leading to debates about whether these vehicles are sanctioned experiments or relics recovered from ancient crusades. This level of exclusivity suggests that the Minotaurs possess connections that grant them access to war assets beyond the reach of most other chapters. The chapter's distinctive heraldry and armor design have also become a focal point of fascination. The bronze-gold plating of their power armor, combined with their crimson markings, evokes imagery of relentless conquerors from ancient legends. Unlike the more iconography-laden chapters, the Minotaurs' aesthetic is austere but unmistakably brutal. Their symbols, often resembling the horns of a charging beast, reinforce the perception of them as harbingers of unrelenting force. Fans have speculated that this symbolism is not merely decorative, but emblematic of their self-image as instruments of destruction, embodying the mythic labyrinthine beast that leaves devastation in its wake. Another point of intrigue lies in their command structure and the secrecy surrounding their leadership. While many Space Marine chapters take pride in their illustrious leaders and their deeds are recorded for posterity, the Minotaurs' hierarchy remains shrouded in mystery. It is speculated that their highest-ranking officers receive direct orders from individuals or councils far removed from the traditional chains of command observed by other chapters. This lack of transparency has led to fervent discussion about who truly commands the chapter and whether their ultimate loyalty lies with the Imperium as a whole or a more clandestine entity. The chapter's unwavering discipline has also garnered attention. Unlike many Space Marine forces that celebrate individual heroism, the Minotaurs operate as a singular, cohesive unit with little emphasis on personal glory. This collective mentality is reinforced by their brutal training regimens and the high degree of coordination displayed in their engagements. Theories abound regarding the psychological conditioning employed to instill such extreme loyalty and uniformity. Some suggest that their indoctrination methods are harsher than those of standard chapters, potentially bordering on practices forbidden by imperial decree. One of the most contentious topics discussed among fans is the chapter's rumored origin. While the official records remain inconclusive, many theorists believe that the Minotaurs may have been shaped by covert experimentation or genetic divergence. Their combat efficiency and extreme resilience suggest enhancements that go beyond the traditional adaptations granted to Space Marines. This has fueled speculation that they may have undergone unique modifications that were either authorized as part of a secret program or the result of remnants of ancient technology rediscovered during their campaigns. The Minotaurs' ability to maintain operational secrecy while achieving such overwhelming results continues to be a subject of fascination and concern. Their campaigns are rarely publicized, and when their forces withdraw, they leave behind devastated battlefields but few traces of their strategic methodologies. This veil of silence only adds to the mythology surrounding the chapter. Within the community of Warhammer 40k enthusiasts, discussions often center around whether the Minotaurs represent a deliberate evolution of Imperial strategy, an experiment in creating a chapter devoted solely to internal suppression, or if they embody a darker truth about the Imperium's readiness to wield absolute destruction against its own people. Ultimately, the Minotaurs stand apart not just for their brutal efficiency, but for the mysteries that surround their rise to prominence and the technological marvels they wield. Whether viewed as loyal enforcers or as tools of shadowy agendas, their existence challenges the narrative of noble defenders and highlights the more sinister aspects of the Imperium's vast and unrelenting machinery. Fans continue to debate the true nature of the Minotaurs, drawn to the paradox of a chapter that embodies both the Imperium's strength and its capacity for terrifying ruthlessness. When examining the Minotaurs chapter, one figure stands above all others in defining their reputation: Astarion Moloch, their fearsome chapter master. His name has become synonymous with the brutal efficiency and unwavering ruthlessness that characterize the Minotaurs as a whole. Astarion Moloch is not merely a commander, he is a living embodiment of the chapter's doctrine of absolute dominance and suppression. His leadership style is defined by an unbreakable will, meticulous precision, and a complete absence of mercy toward those deemed enemies of the Imperium. Under his command, the Minotaurs have become a force capable of reducing even the most fortified worlds to ruin through calculated and overwhelming campaigns. Moloch's physical presence alone is enough to instill fear. Towering even among other Astartes, he is an armored colossus clad in reinforced warplate, adorned with brutal insignias and trophies taken from defeated foes. His armor, heavily reinforced and bearing intricate motifs of bronze and crimson, is said to have withstood the firepower of entire siege regiments. His helm, crowned with imposing bull-like horns, adds to his imposing visage, reinforcing his image as an unstoppable force of destruction. Moloch's strength lies in his unwavering focus and battlefield acumen. He is a master of siege warfare and attrition-based tactics, capable of orchestrating campaigns with a level of patience that most commanders lack. Rather than seeking swift, decisive victories through bold gambits, Moloch's strategy involves methodically dismantling his opponent's defenses, cutting off their resources, and slowly tightening the noose until resistance collapses under the weight of exhaustion and despair. This methodical approach has earned him a reputation as a grim executioner rather than a traditional battlefield hero. However, this strength is also one of his most significant weaknesses. His rigid adherence to the principles of overwhelming force and attrition has led to criticism from other imperial factions who believe that Moloch's campaigns often result in unnecessary destruction. His refusal to compromise or pursue alternative strategies has, on occasion, prolonged conflicts that might have been resolved through more diplomatic or indirect means. This inflexibility makes him a devastating force when given free rein, but also a potential liability in situations where subtlety or restraint is required. Moloch's objectives appear singular: the enforcement of imperial dominance at any cost. His motivations remain a subject of speculation even among those few who have studied the Minotaurs closely. Unlike many chapter masters who strive to inspire loyalty and unity within the Imperium, Moloch's actions suggest a disdain for political maneuvering and a preference for absolute control through strength. Some imperial scholars have speculated that his relentless pursuit of compliance stems from a deeper, unspoken directive, one that goes beyond mere obedience to the High Lords of Terra. Others believe that his hardened resolve is the result of personal losses or betrayals that have shaped him into the cold and uncompromising figure he is today. Another notable figure within the Minotaurs is their enigmatic chief librarian, whose identity and history remain obscured, but whose abilities have become a topic of fascination and fear. Unlike many chapters where psychers serve as both advisors and combatants, the Minotaurs' librarians are rarely seen on the front lines. Instead, their influence is often felt in the precision and timing of the chapter's strikes, leading some to believe that their psychic abilities are used more for tactical foresight and communication rather than open displays of psychic power. The chief librarian is believed to play a critical role in coordinating Moloch's strategies, using his abilities to detect hidden threats and foresee potential betrayals before they manifest. The Minotaur's Master of the Forge is another figure of importance, overseeing the chapter's unparalleled arsenal and technological assets. His dedication to maintaining and upgrading the chapter's war machines is unmatched, and his innovations have contributed to their fearsome battlefield presence. The Master of the Forge's pragmatism and resourcefulness enable the Minotaurs to deploy siege engines and breacher units in ways that defy standard Mechanicus doctrines. However, this technical brilliance is not without cost, as some whisper that his methods skirt dangerously close to heretical experimentation. His ability to secure rare and powerful relics has only deepened the mystery surrounding the chapter's sources of war gear, leading some to wonder whether his loyalty lies purely with Mars or with something else altogether. Among the ranks of the Minotaur's elite warriors, there are few as renowned or feared as their contemptor dreadnoughts. These ancient constructs house the remains of some of the chapter's most venerated champions, whose deeds in life earned them eternal service. One such figure, known only by the moniker the Bronze Hammer, is said to have led assaults against traitor-held fortresses with such fury that entire garrisons surrendered at the sight of his hulking form breaching their walls. The Bronze Hammer's resilience and destructive power have become legend, yet his continued service within a dreadnought sarcophagus serves as a reminder of the brutal price paid by the Minotaurs for their unwavering commitment to war. The rank-and-file leaders of the Minotaurs, such as their veteran squad commanders and sergeants, also play crucial roles in maintaining the chapter's cohesion. Unlike the charismatic heroes of other chapters, Minotaur leaders are distinguished by their ability to enforce strict discipline and execute orders without hesitation. Their strength lies not in personal glory, but in their ability to maintain formation and focus even under the heaviest fire. This unbreakable unity is a reflection of the chapter's broader ethos. Individual achievement is secondary to the collective victory of the Minotaurs as a whole. While many imperial leaders are celebrated for their deeds or their loyalty, the figures within the Minotaurs are known instead for their sheer endurance and resilience. They do not seek acclaim or recognition, only results. This anonymity, paired with their fearsome reputations, only deepens the mythos surrounding the chapter. For every victory attributed to them, there are countless rumors of internal conflicts silenced before they could erupt into greater crises. Whether praised as champions of order or condemned as executioners, the individuals who shaped the Minotaur's destiny embody the harsh reality of the Imperium: strength without compromise, duty without recognition, and victory at any cost. The Minotaurs chapter remains one of the most enigmatic and controversial space marine forces in the Imperium, surrounded by numerous unanswered questions and competing theories that fuel debates among scholars, inquisitors, and fans alike. Perhaps the most pervasive mystery is the true origin of the chapter. While their existence is officially recorded within the Imperium's vast archives, the details surrounding their founding remain shrouded in secrecy. Unlike other chapters whose lineages are clearly traced back to a known genetic progenitor, the Minotaur's genetic legacy is disputed. Some believe they may be the result of an obscure founding, while others speculate that their existence is tied to highly classified or experimental origins. This lack of clarity has led to significant speculation, with theories ranging from sanctioned genetic modification to the rediscovery of lost war-making projects from the dark age of technology. One prominent theory suggests that the Minotaurs may have been deliberately engineered to serve as a weapon of internal suppression rather than external defense. Their repeated deployment against Imperial factions rather than xenos or external threats reinforces this belief. However, this raises uncomfortable questions about who authorized such a force and for what ultimate purpose. If they were created specifically to counter potential insurrections or even rebellious space marine chapters, this implies a level of forethought and distrust within the Imperium's highest ranks that few are willing to admit. It also begs the question: could the Minotaurs one day be used against even loyalist forces if circumstances demanded it? This possibility has led to quiet debates among Imperial commanders who wonder where the line is drawn when a chapter is weaponized not to protect, but to punish. Another key area of speculation concerns their relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus. As noted by many observers, the Minotaurs possess an arsenal that surpasses what would typically be accessible to a space marine chapter of their size and history. Theories about how they maintain such a formidable supply of war machines and relics abound. Some posit that their fleet and armory are maintained by a secretive Mechanicus faction operating outside of the usual treaties and limitations. Others suggest that the Minotaurs may have uncovered caches of lost technology during their campaigns, perhaps from ancient ship graveyards or long-forgotten forge worlds. These theories are fueled by reports of unusual weapon designs and patterns of power armor not commonly seen among other chapters, which only deepens the mystery surrounding their war gear. Equally puzzling is their method of recruitment. Unlike most Space Marine chapters, which have homeworlds or defined recruiting grounds, the Minotaurs have no known central planet from which they draw aspirants. This absence of a visible homeworld has led some to speculate that they recruit from a wide array of worlds as they pass through different systems, while others suggest that they may rely on hidden worlds that are carefully kept from the Imperium's broader gaze. Some even believe that their recruits are not entirely voluntary, with whispers of entire populations being conscripted as part of the price for the Minotaurs' intervention in rebellions. If this is true, it would place the chapter at odds with the traditions followed by most of their brethren and further solidify their reputation as a force shaped more by necessity than honor. The motivations behind Asterion Moloch's relentless obedience also remain a source of heated speculation. Some interpret his actions as those of a commander bound by unbreakable duty, while others suggest he may be driven by something deeper, perhaps even a personal vendetta or an ancient debt owed to figures unknown. His strategic precision and his complete lack of public political maneuvering stand in stark contrast to other leaders within the Imperium's war machine. This has led to conjecture that Moloch's objectives may not fully align with those of the Imperium as a whole. If this is true, it raises troubling questions about whether his ultimate loyalty lies with the High Lords of Terra, the chapter itself, or a separate agenda that remains hidden from view. Another area of intense debate involves the fate of worlds that fall under the Minotaurs' judgment. Reports of total planetary devastation often lack detailed accounts of what happens in the aftermath. In some cases, records of entire campaigns vanish from Imperial archives, leaving only fragmented reports of shattered cities and mass relocations. This has led to theories that the Minotaurs' actions may serve purposes beyond mere suppression, that they may be eliminating knowledge, technology, or individuals deemed too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Whether they act of their own volition or under direct orders from powerful Imperial factions remains unclear. These disappearances create a chilling narrative. The idea that the Minotaurs may not only destroy rebellion, but also erase its very memory. The question of the chapter's future purpose also looms large. As the Imperium becomes increasingly fractured, with war and heresy spreading across countless systems, the demand for brutal enforcers like the Minotaurs will likely grow. This raises the unsettling possibility that their role could expand beyond quelling isolated uprisings. Could they be tasked with enforcing loyalty on a galactic scale if the Imperium itself fractures further? Some whisper of a grim future in which entire sectors might be subjected to systematic purges, not just for defiance, but for failing to meet ever-increasing demands for unity and resources. If this prophecy holds true, the Minotaurs could become both saviors and executioners of humanity's survival. Finally, the question of the chapter's secrecy remains unanswered. Why do they operate under such a heavy shroud of mystery, even among their own kind? While some chapters keep certain traditions and origins hidden for cultural reasons, the Minotaurs' lack of transparency feels deliberate and systematic. This raises suspicions that their existence is tied to something the Imperium wishes to keep hidden at all costs. Whether it is their origin, their ultimate purpose, or a secret that predates their recorded history, the shroud of uncertainty surrounding them only fuels further theories and speculation. The unanswered questions surrounding the Minotaurs contribute significantly to their legend, turning them into more than just a chapter of Space Marines. They are a symbol of the Imperium's capacity for both strength and secrecy. In a galaxy where loyalty is often enforced through fear, the mystery surrounding the Minotaurs suggests that some truths may be too dangerous to reveal, even to those sworn to uphold the Emperor's will. As long as these mysteries endure, the Minotaurs will continue to inspire both awe and unease, their actions seen not only as acts of war, but as echoes of a larger and far more complex agenda. The long-term implications of the Minotaurs' chapter's existence and actions extend far beyond the immediate aftermath of their brutal campaigns. Their continued deployment as an instrument of Imperial suppression will likely reshape the Imperium's internal dynamics in profound ways, reinforcing both stability and fear across the stars. However, this influence comes at a cost that could either strengthen the Imperium's hold or lead to unforeseen fractures in its already fragile unity. One of the most significant potential outcomes is the normalization of overwhelming force as a standard method of conflict resolution. If the Minotaurs' approach becomes the template for future campaigns, other Imperial institutions may adopt similar strategies, leading to an escalation in the level of destruction seen in conflicts. This could result in a galaxy where diplomacy, however rare, becomes obsolete, replaced by a doctrine of complete annihilation as the first and only option. While this would likely deter rebellion in some sectors, it could also foster greater resentment among populations who witness entire planets destroyed for the actions of a few. Such resentment, though buried under fear, has a way of festering over generations and could give rise to more insidious forms of defiance. The Minotaurs' reputation for enforcing loyalty through fear may also contribute to a cultural shift within the Imperium. Worlds that remain compliant due to the fear of retribution rather than genuine devotion to the Emperor's will are more likely to fall into stagnation. Instead of striving for greatness in service to the Imperium, many planetary rulers may adopt policies driven solely by self-preservation. This could erode the sense of purpose that binds humanity together and weaken the Imperium from within, as entire sectors begin to prioritize survival over contribution to the war effort. Such a shift could undermine the Imperium's capacity to sustain itself in an era of escalating threats from alien empires and the forces of chaos. In the military sphere, the continued reliance on the Minotaurs poses a dangerous precedent for other chapters of Space Marines. The Adeptus Astartes were once revered as protectors of humanity, yet the Minotaurs' role as enforcers of internal control risks altering the perception of the Emperor's Angels of Death. Instead of being seen as saviors, Space Marines across the galaxy may be viewed with fear and suspicion by those they are meant to protect. If other chapters are pressured to follow similar mandates, the divide between the people of the Imperium and their transhuman guardians could grow irreparably. This rift could lead to a dangerous loss of morale on Imperial worlds, where populations may come to see the Astartes as distant overlords rather than symbols of hope. Conversely, the Minotaurs' continued success in stamping out rebellion could also serve as a warning that reinforces unity in certain sectors. In regions where loyalty is already strong, the knowledge that rebellion is futile may further solidify devotion to the Emperor. However, this form of loyalty is brittle, built on the fear of annihilation rather than a shared belief in the righteousness of imperial rule. In the long term, such fear-based cohesion can crumble under external pressure, especially if the Imperium's enemies learn to exploit the paranoia and distrust that the Minotaurs inadvertently spread. Another consequence of the Minotaurs' existence is the potential shift in the balance of power within the Imperium itself. The chapter's obedience to high-level directives without question makes them a valuable tool for factions within the Adeptus Terra and the Inquisition. If one faction were to gain greater influence over the Minotaurs, they could effectively wield the chapter as a political weapon, silencing rivals and consolidating power. This possibility raises the specter of an internal power struggle where the Minotaurs become pawns in a larger game. Their destructive might turn toward Imperial worlds not out of necessity, but out of political ambition. There is also the lingering question of how the Imperium's other defenders will respond in the long term. Chapters such as the Salamanders, who prioritize the protection of humanity, may grow increasingly disillusioned with the use of the Minotaurs as agents of destruction. This ideological rift among the Adeptus Astartes could deepen over time, potentially leading to an era of mistrust or even outright conflict between chapters with opposing views on how best to serve the Imperium. While the Astartes have survived internal strife in the past, another fracture within their ranks could weaken the Imperium during a time when unity is crucial to its survival. The Minotaurs' reliance on extreme attrition tactics also carries practical risks. Their campaigns often leave behind ruinous worlds that take centuries to recover, if they recover at all. In a galaxy where every resource counts, the loss of productive worlds due to scorched earth policies could create logistical strain on the Imperium's already overburdened supply chains. Entire subsectors left in economic ruin may struggle to provide tithes or support future war efforts, forcing the Imperium to devote additional resources to reconstruction or risk losing key territories to opportunistic enemies. From a symbolic perspective, the Minotaurs' legacy may alter the way future rebellions are viewed. The sheer finality of their methods could lead to the belief that any form of dissent is a death sentence, regardless of the justification. This perception could deter legitimate grievances from being addressed, leading to a cycle where suppressed frustrations eventually boil over in ways that even the Minotaurs cannot contain. The Imperium's strength lies in its ability to inspire both fear and faith. If fear becomes the dominant force, the spiritual unity of its subjects may be irreparably damaged. On a larger scale, the continued use of the Minotaurs as enforcers raises ethical and existential questions about the Imperium's trajectory. At what point does survival at any cost become indistinguishable from tyranny? The Minotaurs serve as a stark reminder that the Imperium's greatest threat may not come from external enemies, but from the compromises it makes to sustain its power. If the Imperium becomes increasingly reliant on chapters like the Minotaurs, it may reach a point where it can no longer recognize the line between defense and oppression. In the distant future, the Minotaurs' role in shaping the Imperium's approach to governance and warfare may be viewed as either a necessary adaptation to an unforgiving galaxy or as a tragic step toward self-destruction. If the Imperium survives long enough to reflect on its history, the actions of the Minotaurs will stand as a testament to the lengths humanity was willing to go in its struggle for survival. Whether their legacy is remembered as one of salvation or devastation will depend on how their methods are judged by the generations that follow.